What is your number? If you wanted to stop working tomorrow, how much money do you need to put aside that way you can live your life financially free? And the question is, how do you figure that out? And I know this is such an important thing to figure out because when I used to walk around the streets asking people about money, I asked them about inflation, but I also asked them, how much money would you need to retire today and never work another day in your life? And the first thing everybody would say is, and then I would get a wild answer. I received numbers as low as $35,000 all the way up to $250 million. So what's your number? How much money would you need to retire today and never work another day in your life? Now, I'm not saying you need to go out and retire and never work because, well, those who retire early die early, but rather, if you wanted to be financially free, what does that number look like? Now, if you go and talk to most traditional financial advisors, I am not a financial advisor, but if you ask most traditional financial advisors, they would recommend you follow something like the rule of 4, which says that figure out how much money you need every single year, and that should be 4% of the total amount of money you put aside. So if you need $50,000 a year to live your life financially free, that if you made $50,000, you had $50,000 hit your bank account on January 1st, that would be able to take you through December 31st. Well, to figure out how much money you would need, that means $50,000 has to be 4% of your total nest egg, which means you'd have to put aside $1.25 million according to the 4% rule to have enough money to put aside. That way then you can pull out 4% of the principal value or $50,000 and increase how much money you pull out adjusted for inflation to be able to fund your life through retirement. Now, the problem with the 4% rule for me is that when you have periods of high inflation, that's going to eat away at the value of this nest egg. And if you're not growing this nest egg, then the nest egg is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So you could potentially run out of money, especially if you're living a long life. And if you're going through the Mind Valley Quest, your goal is to live a long and healthy life. So while the 4% rule works for a lot of people, I'm not a huge fan of it because it doesn't serve my needs. Instead, what I like to do is follow more of a cash flow method, which is how can I have enough cash flow for my assets to fund my lifestyle? So it's a little bit of a different approach because now my goal isn't to sell off my investments. My goal is to just live off of the distributions and the royalties and the payments that my assets are paying me. That way I can just live off of the cash flow that my assets are paying. So what I like to do to calculate this number is come up with a range because some cash flow producing assets are going to pay higher returns than others. So I like to generally follow the 3 to 10% rule, which means if you need $50,000 a year to live your life financially free today, then you want to take that $50,000 and divide it by 3% and divide it by 10%, which means you would have to put aside somewhere between $1.66 million, assuming you can get a 3% cash flow yield, or on the other end, $500,000 put aside if you can get a 10% cash flow yield. Which means you'd have to put aside somewhere between $500,000 to $1.66 million to be able to generate that $50,000 a year to be able to live your life financially free. And now your job is to figure out, well, how can I put aside this $500,000 to $1.66 million as fast as possible? That way you can be financially free. Now, there's a couple ways that you can go about doing that. I mean, you can work to spend less money. You can work to earn more money. But now you're doing it strategically because in part 1, we talked about building that financial system. We talked about how to spend your money smartly. Well, now what we've learned is the reason why you want to spend your money smartly is so you can own more assets. And more particularly now, how you can generate more cash flow, how you can own more cash flow producing assets that will continue to pay you even when you're not working. Now, we talked about the different ways that you can generate cash flow. You can do this through your cash investments, through your stock market dividend yielding investments, through your real estate investments, or potentially even your business investments. This is the most difficult one. But if you want to be able to live your life financially free, that means if you want to do that through cash flow, you're going to need somewhere between $500,000 and $1.66 million put aside. And this is now true financial freedom, because true financial freedom means that you have enough cash flow from your assets coming in, covering your lifestyle. Because if your assets are paying for your expenses, well, now you're financially free. There's a saying that I've heard that richness is a measure of time, along with wealth. And if you have $1 million, how rich are you? Or are you rich? Well, if you're spending $50,000 a year, you're rich for 20 years. After that, you're broke. But if now you spend $50,000 a year and your assets are paying you $50,000 a year, now you're wealthy because that time goes from 20 years to infinity because your assets will continue to pay you even when you're not working. And you might be wondering, but Jaspreet, what about inflation? The cost of living also goes up and things get more expensive, right? And you're right. But this is why if you own the right assets, the cash flow that you generate will also increase with inflation. For example, let's assume now that you're investing in stocks and inflation happens, which is what we've seen happen. I mean, the prices of groceries today are way more expensive than they were in the early 1970s. So if you're investing in companies that, say, sell stuff and the prices of things go up, that means nominally, the amount of money this company is making would also increase because they're going to sell their products for more money, which means their profits would also nominally increase. The amount of profit that they have, dollar figure, because, well, they're making more money. And that would also mean that the dividends that they're paying out would also have to increase because, well, they're making more money and they can also increase their dividends as well, which means now you can get more cash flow even though you're seeing that inflation. And sometimes if you invest in a really good investment, that cash flow that you're getting will exceed the rate of inflation, which means you're effectively becoming richer because the cash flow that you're generating, the profits that you're generating is exceeding the rate of inflation. It's the same with real estate. If you're investing in a good area with growing demand, what happens? Rental prices grow up. And if rental prices are growing, that also means that you're making more money. Sure, your expenses will also go up. I mean, if you're investing in a property where property values are going up, your property insurance is going to go up. Your property taxes are going to go up. Your utility bills might go up. But the goal now is if you're investing in a strong area is that your rental income will grow faster than the expenses, which means, again, yes, inflation happens. In 50 years, $50,000 a year is not going to buy you what it can today. But if you can work to generate that type of cash flow, that cash flow will also grow, assuming you're investing in good assets. This is why I was saying in the previous lesson that these cash investments, your savings account and your certificates of deposits, these aren't going to make you wealthy because you're not seeing that type of growth. It's just an interest on the savings that you put aside. It's a place for you to park your money. But now when it comes to you actually building wealth and being financially free, what people like to call quote unquote retirement, this is now really how can you have enough money put aside for you to live your life financially free? And I want you to dream big and think big here because what happens to a lot of people is they say, I just want to live off of $35,000 a year and I'm good. Okay, that's fine if that's what you want to do, but why not dream a little bit bigger? Because you can. There's no limit to how big you can dream. There's no limit to how big you can think. I mean, it's just what you put on paper. So think about what would your dream lifestyle be? What types of cars do you want? What type of house do you want? What type of vacations do you want? What type of things do you want? And how much money would you need to put aside in order to have this lifestyle? Now, when you see these numbers, it might be a little daunting because, oh, wow, that's really far away. But now you're working for something bigger. And even if you don't hit those goals, you're going to be higher. You're going to have more than what you originally planned for. So might as well go big because there's no cons of thinking big. And this is where I want to talk about the concept of true retirement because I kind of hinted at this in the beginning of this video that those who retire early die early because I like to think of it more like lifestyle design as opposed to a traditional retirement. Because why would you want to stop working? I've seen this happen with friends and family of mine where one of my dad's good friends who was an engineer his entire life, he worked very hard at his job and he would work every single day. Then I think he was 67 years old. He hit retirement. They had a big retirement celebration for him. And he was so excited because now he's retiring and he doesn't have to work anymore. And then he got home and now he had nothing to do. So he'd wake up every day, go sit on the sofa and watch TV. And he went from this healthy person, this motivated person, this jokester person, he was like this big goofball, to now immediately having all these health issues. He started having physical health issues. He went into depression and started having all these health issues to the point where he had to go back to work in his 70s. That way he could start to feel alive again. He worked for a couple of years and then he had to retire again. And now he went back to the same old state. He went back to that depression. He went back to the physical issues and it literally destroyed the life out of him because he followed that traditional retirement. So when you talk about retirement planning, on one hand, yes, Think about the financial side. But on the other hand, I also want you to think about the purpose side. What do you want to do in this quote unquote golden age? What do you want to do when you hit that financial freedom? What is your passion? What is your purpose? And maybe you don't know your passion, and that's okay, because a lot of people talk about, you need to find your passion. Well, most people's passions are changing every 6 months, but rather, what do you want to do? What gives you fulfillment? What gives you enjoyment? And how can you start doing that now? Because if you can start working towards that purpose today and do things to help you live that purpose, well, maybe you'll find a way to monetize that purpose as well, which will allow you to live more of that financially free life while also doing something that you love. So as you're thinking about the financial side of your retirement planning, whether you're following the 4% rule, whether you're following the cash flow method, which is 3 to 10%, and trying to figure out how much money you need, depending on the assets that you're investing in, I also want you to think about, what does this financial freedom also look like? Is it going to be you sitting on your butt watching TV all day and night long? Or is it going to be you actually doing something? And you need to think about the financial side and the purpose side if you really want to live a truly fit and free life. Like we talked about in the beginning of this quest with the quadruped theory, how can you combine both of these two things together? What I'd like you to do now is take a snapshot of your expenses. In the beginning of this quest, you put together a sheet where you wrote down all of your expenses. We'll bring that back out today. What are your monthly expenses like? And what do the expenses look like in your dream lifestyle? Now, once you have these two numbers, your current expenses and your dream expenses, I want you to now follow the 4% rule and the cash flow method to see how much money you need to put aside today in order to be able to live your life financially free. And then I want you to share in the community which method you'd prefer to follow. Is it the 4% rule or is it the cash flow method? Let me know. And with that, I'll see you in the next lesson.